All right, so let's begin to think now on how I can make, how can I apply this to my structure, right? Because right now we have kind of a parametric surface. If I change that surface, all these other panels and patterns are going to update to it, right? But I want to get to a level where I'm controlling even trusses based on this idea that I can modify it. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to go to my original surface. Actually, you know what? For this, I'm just going to draw in another surface. So let's create our. Let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to call this Class 05 roof surface or pattern surface. All right, so let's kind of fake in a truss for this, right? So I'm going to try and mimic a profile. I may get it right, it may not, it doesn't matter. So go ahead and make a new mass. Make sure you're in Imperial. Oh, it's going to leave me at metric. Whatever, doesn't matter. So then I want to draw in a profile. So again, it's always setting work planes. I'm going to set my work plane to be there. I'm going to show my work plane so I can see it, right? And then I want to create kind of a swoopy kind of pattern like I had before. We'll assume that that's my truss, something like this here. And then I'm going to select that line. I'm going to divide my path. And that's fine. I can do 6 for this. I can do 12, whatever I want to do, right? And then at each one of those lines, right, I want to put in. I'm going to load in and draw on each one of those points, okay? So I'm going to place a point there, place a point there, 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 and there, okay? And then on that is I'm going to sweep like a triangular truss along this. So I'm going to set my work plane on one of those points so it feeds along that line. And then I'm going to open my work plane viewer, right? So I know I'm on that point. And we'll do the triangle. That's fine. We'll do the triangle. I'm going to click on that polygon tool. And then I want to make sure that I'm not making a surface and my sides are three sides. And now when I snap on my point, I'm going to do one. Kind of keep an eye on your numbers there. So that's one end of it. Now, along the line of this, I can control my loft based a little bit better. If I wanted to load one on each one of those, I could. I know that along this line, once I get to the top curve, I'm going to want to make my profile even bigger of that triangle. So I'm just going to move off to that edge, or that point. So I'll go ahead and set my work plane again to there. And I'm going to open up my viewer. So now I'm working on that plane. I'm going to create the same polygon from that center point, 3 sides. And I kind of got to hover over here until I get my snapping going here. I'm going to zoom in. Doesn't look like I'm really on a point right now, does it? And it might be that I just don't have the point. So that's my old one. There's my point. So there we go. We found it. There we go. So I'm going to make that one significantly larger. Close that out. And then my final end one, I'll set my work plane on the end portion to be there. Open up my viewer. Do the same profile for that truss. And again, it's a little finessing on it until I find where I need to be. There we go. So because I have 1 to 1 to 1, I should be able to select this line with this one, this profile, and this profile. And I should be able to create a form off of that. In the event I can't create the form, I'm going to have some issues. So let's just try the profiles themselves and create form. Right, so I get something abnormal to what I wanted. So I might need to go on to each one of those lines and really fine tune it. I may be able just to turn off my path on that. Surface representation, original path, no nodes, click OK. There we go, step 1 and 1. Yeah, Once I divide that line, I can't build geometry off it. So that's the only really kind of issue with doing it this way, right? I have no way of doing that. I figured I'd try it. Ah, there we go. We got the divide form back. Okay, create form. 1, 2, and 3. Adding to each one of those. Now if I create my form, it should loft my surface. So that's more along the lines of what I wanted out of it, right? And you can fine tune it, because now that I have this, right, I can drag my line down. So my truss is now parametric in so far as that it's just a massing of that truss. So it's not a surface, it's not a building, it's actually a profile of a truss. And then I just want to add a simple gridded structure to mimic the idea that this thing has some structure to it. So I'll just undo that profile change. Whoop. Right, and then I select this side surface. It's going to be a little tricky to get just the surface there. And then the same way I made the roof, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide that out. Okay? And then I'm going to give it a regular spacing, because I want to make, you know, maybe I want to make a triangular truss out of this, right? So what I would do is I would say that my V grid is fine, but my U grid needs to be 1. Or maybe it's opposite. Maybe this one's 12, and then this one's 1. So you have to pay attention to how that's working. So now what I can do is I have a rectangular division out of this, and I'm going to create 2 separate pattern families. I'm going to divide out the side surface while I'm at it. Make sure that that one's division is 12, or that one's 1, this one's 12, right? And then my bottom piece, make sure that that one goes to 12. Nope, that one's still 1, and that one's 12. Okay, so then you'll see that I have some issues here where my points aren't really lining up. So this is where we'll get into adaptive components and trying to do that. So I actually will do both with it. We'll leave that bottom surface as is, and we'll do something else with that. Okay, so we'll do 3 different moves with this. So 3 different ways we can look at how we would create this structure. So one would be that I can do the typical pattern family with it. I would say that, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a pattern family that's a rectangular element. Right, and on this one, I definitely want the pieces at the top, but then I'm going to put an angular element in it, right? So I do reference line, make sure 3D snapping's on. I'm going to come from one point to the other point, right? And then in the same family, I'm going to do both. So I'm going to have family type 1 and family type 2, because I'm pretty sure that I can do a visibility parameter on it. Let's keep it simple. Let's do 1. Let's keep them separate. So on this, I'm gonna take and I'm gonna make a. So on this one, I know that I can sweep a geometry from midpoint on it. Now, how I do the end point is going to be a lot different. Okay, to do the structure correctly. So let's see what I'm talking about. If I add a point at the middle of this reference line, and then I say I'm going to set my work plane, and I create a circular element at the center of that piece, and then I tell it that I'm going to put a parameter called radius on it. And then I'm going to sweep that geometry to create that, that internal strut. Looks fine right there. But then now the minute I change that radius to be something smaller or larger, so maybe I make it 3 inches, you'll see how it flutes the ends, right? And that's because of it's only sweeping from a midpoint across a singular line of geometry. That may or may not be what I want it to do, right? So how I get it to maintain consistency along that line is I actually need to put a point or strike points from the end points and build geometry from there. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to tab through and get a work plane that's associated with the end of that line there. So there we go. And I'm going to show that to make sure that I'm now facing that line. And then I would draw my circular element on that point, put a radius on it. I've already made my parameter a radius, so I just got to add it. And then I would do the same thing at this end. Set my work plane there. Put a circular element. Put on my radius. Add parameter, radius. Then I would take my line, my circle, and my other circle, and I would create form on that. Now when I change that radius value, it's going to change the whole length of that to be the same. Okay? All right, and then I'm just going to sweep the rest of the geometry with one profile. So I would click a point. In this case, because it's a chain of lines and not a singular line, I could do it from the midpoint. So that's one good important note to remember. Now I'll just make them the same. Typically, the outside ones are going to be larger than the inside ones. So maybe we'll just make it radius 2. One and one and one. And I'm going to create form. And there we go. All right, so that's 1. And I'm going to load that into my project. And I can't remember which one we were in here. Probably be family 4. There we go. So now when I select that surface, I'm going to say that my rectangular pattern is family 5. And there we go. Pretty easy to make a truss, right? So in the event that I want it to flip-flop, right? So I want one to go to the other one. I want it to actually continue up and do this triangle pattern. I would just make one that goes on the other side, right? That just flips it. One goes one way, one goes the other way, okay? And I'd have to tap through and create that. And what's nice is now when I change the profile of my surface, my truss is going to adapt to that, right? So now I have a parametric truss, a pretty fast parametric truss in that.